Hello everyone and welcome. What are those top 10 things that you can do to recover from your injury faster and more fully? This is the inside scoop from my clinic as a physiotherapist in North Vancouver, British Columbia. I am really happy to share these with you. Number one, stop what you're doing. When you don't stop what you're doing, whether that's in your sport, on your hike, picking up your little one, you further damage the tissue in the area, which creates more of a cascade of inflammation, damages the tissue around that area, and you are not doing yourself any favors. I know this is intuitive and that most people will, but when it's a minor injury, you would be surprised how many people carry on doing what they're doing. We are attached to our occupation, to our role as a family member, and it is difficult to stop, but know that you need to give yourself permission to stop. Number two, seek professional help, not Google Doc, not YouTube Doc, not YouTube Physio, one-on-one professional help that you trust. It can be difficult to get an appointment with your physio. It can be difficult to get an appointment with your doctor, but do get an appointment with your physio as soon as you can. If you can't walk on your foot, if it's excruciating to the touch in whatever body part, then go to the ER. Get yourself some help. The third thing that's really, really important, to manage your buy-in. So you know yourself. You know that you've seen a professional, but you're not really sure you're going to follow what they tell you to do. So you may be somebody that needs to understand your injury in order to have the buy-in. And if you know you're that person, then it is really on you to ask your physio to educate you a little more. Now, this doesn't mean I think you should go down the Google rabbit hole. Absolutely not. Understanding how that inflammation occurs, understanding how that vascularization occurs may or may not be important to you. And it is up to you and your physio to make sure that education gets translated to you in a way that helps you to really buy into your recovery. Find the person that's going to best support you that way. I have seen many people who've come to me after having seen another physio, and they say, it just didn't work for them. They're hoping that my therapy is going to work a little bit better. Often it was one or two, didn't follow the exercises, didn't find the benefit, really didn't buy in. It is so important to actually do those things that you were told to do. Don't get caught up in imaging. I have had patients in the past who really don't want to start their rehab until they've gotten an x-ray from their doctor, or they have had a CT scan ordered for their strain in their shoulder, and they're going to wait to see what that says. So important that the general population understands physiotherapy, conservative management, exercise, maybe manual therapy, maybe IMS, should be done with or without that kind of imaging. Now, if you're very afraid or you're very delicate, you're in a ton of pain, that might be an exception and that might be a conversation with your physician, but know that you need to start sooner rather than later. On the other end of that, you may be coming to the physio with imaging and you thought you were just fine, but now you realize that you have OA in both of your hips. And now you're worried that, maybe you can't be a rower anymore. So imaging is one of those things that can, in some ways, gaslight a patient into thinking they're not well when in fact they are well. And to put it into perspective, most people over the age of 40 will have some positive findings on an x-ray. So maybe some kind of irritation in the cartilage through one of the joints. But so many of those people do not have symptoms. Is it really helpful for them to now completely change their exercise? Absolutely not, because exercise is protective. A conversation with your physiotherapist about what that imaging means, but not now seeing yourself as someone who can't do what they did before necessarily, depending on the activity. This is really important, especially if you're someone who hasn't been injured before or had imaging before, to feel as though you are a sick person or a person with a diagnosis does not always serve you. So it's how to frame that. 5, pain management. You are coming to me maybe as that person who knew how to grin and bear it, who was an athlete getting injured all their life, or you might be that person who has never been injured or just on the odd occasion and gets anxiety, maybe is afraid to faint when they're hurt. Where you're coming from is really important, because how you perceive pain is really important, because pain is completely filtered through your brain and your emotional mechanism. And then what you actually experience as pain can be less or more based on how your brain and your emotions are getting involved. And this is not in any way, shape, or form saying that your pain is in your head. It is, however, an organ inside your head called the brain that is sending these physiological neuro signals to tell you what that experience is. And that is more of a complex understanding of pain, but really, really critical to know. If you are someone who doesn't really know what's a good pain, what's not a good pain, and you're rehabilitating a tendon, then it might be really helpful for you to understand that a little bit of discomfort is absolutely normal, because we need to load the tendon to repair it. If you're someone who has had a disc bulge and there's pressure on the nerve and there's shooting pain into your leg, it may be important for you to understand that that is not an acceptable pain that we just want to work into. We want to make sure that the pain that's traveling down your leg comes back up to the center, that we're not feeling that kind of shooting sharp pain. That is your body signaling to you that it's not in a good place, and we need to manage that through positioning and exercise, etc. You really need to have a good understanding of what levels of pain are acceptable throughout your rehabilitation. If you're a sensitive person, what not to worry about, where you need to calm your mind, what you need to breathe into, and accept that it's part of the process. In fact, your body is getting better through the process. 6 is environment. Environment can be a physical environment at a desk job where the setup ergonomically is just not helping you at all. So that physical environment needs to change to support your rehab. You spend so many minutes of every day in that environment, and repetitive irritation is going to accumulate more than anything else. Environment, it might also be the levels of stress that you have in your environment. If you are someone who is working in an ER and having to move, and maybe you're not too injured, but when somebody comes in and is hurt, you can no longer pay attention to your own body because the level of stress is really high. So when we're talking about injury recovery based on how bad your injury is, and then returning to work, that has to be a conversation that considers your environment and what things can we do, put into place in order to ensure that the environment supports you better. The next thing that's also really important and maybe intuitive for most people is managing your social expectations. I'm a mom, and if I hurt myself, I've got to tell my daughter that, maybe I'm not going to pick her up, and maybe I'm not going to flop her arms around, and maybe I can't lay with her on that side of the bed as she goes to sleep. That's not actually that easy to do, because who we are socially, we are also so attached to. It's okay, I'll do it this one. Oh, I just can't not change this part of my life. Well, then you're going to be in a place of hurting for longer, and you won't be 100% there for your family, your friends, your partner. Anyways, pay attention to what social expectations are keeping you from getting better. So that leads me to sleep. Number 8 is sleep. Your body is incredible at healing itself. However, we can't do that without the right amount of rest. You need to absolutely make time to sleep and support that within your daily schedule. Let your body do the job that it was created for. Number 9, it is believing in your recovery. Believing in recovery is really framed in how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as someone who is going to get back to your sport of choice? Do you see your pain as, oh yeah, this is my bad shoulder? Or do you see yourself as whole and healthy and you've got a bit of an irritation? Believing in recovery is really, really huge. And yes, you need to trust the process, and maybe you need to consider why you don't believe in recovery. So that can be a tricky thing, that sometimes if it's a serious injury or it's a car accident, having a therapist, a counselor to talk to you about your trauma and how that trauma response makes it difficult for you to believe in your recovery, potentially even to relax enough to let your body help you to heal. You might be someone who has a parent who had knee osteoarthritis and they could barely walk by their 70s, and so you may or may not realize that you're thinking of yourself in the future as your mom, and for that reason you're maybe not doing the exercises that are prescribed to you because you think you're damaged and that's going to make it worse on a very subconscious level. Sometimes recovery is inevitable if you put the right inputs into it. Our body is transforming itself cellular level day to day. Our body can absolutely change and transform through that process, but the inputs are key, and it's not just the physical inputs, it's also your breath, your awareness, it is the emotion involved. So belief in your recovery and having an honest look at that and seeing what you need to support that is really, really important, so that you can imagine that full 100% recovery moment where you're getting back to doing what it is that gives you deeper meaning in life. Which leads me to number 10, and it is just that, doing what you love, or having the goal to get back to doing what you love, who you are authentically as a person, and what drives you, what gives you purpose and meaning, whether that's partially physical or very physical, is one of those things that cannot be separated from your rehabilitation and recovery. So whether that means you're a dancer, whether that means that you need to get back to your writing, whether that means you want to go for strolls with your grandchildren or your children or your parents, or whether that means you just want to be able to go into a grocery store and feel like you don't have to, have a very difficult time with that. Whatever it is that makes you feel part of your community and that makes you feel whole and makes you feel like who you truly are has to be considered in your recovery. Because what I have seen over the years, and what I know people that are close to me have experienced over the years prior to me becoming a physio, is that people do develop chronic pain, and that tends to correlate with stopping doing those things that give them joy and meaning. And sometimes it's not necessarily finding the right therapist or the right treatment, but it's changing that area in our life that feels like it's a void into something more meaningful that finally gets people out of pain. So hopefully you're coming to me with a fresh injury or something that looks like a re-injury and not this state of chronic pain, but know that we are doing everything we can so that you will be recovered fully more quickly, and then down the road your body will have really no limits until we get to that point where we need to consider making some changes. So I hope this was helpful, and I am putting out more content. My goal with this content is to give you some of that insight, some of those little secrets that I wish I knew as a girl growing up. I wish I knew before I was a physio, that have given me these aha moments and really helped me help my patients. This is not meant to be therapy for you, as I mentioned, see a professional for individual care. But please have a look at my other videos and subscribe if you find the content useful and that it adds value to your rehab and your recovery and the performance in whatever sport or thing in life that you do. Thanks so much for joining. Bye-bye.